Okay.
That's Claude Layfield. I want to say that's Don Isaac. John Trussell, Henry McGurran, Lou Armstrong. I think that's Lou's wife, Henrietta. That's Swede Edlin. Orville Swede Edlin. Jeff Coleman, Joe Lasha, Russell McFall, John Harshman, Dean Thompson, Marsh White, Pete Anderson, I can't make out that guy. But the interesting thing is if you look at everyone, this is 56. Fred Hammert. Right there. You know, if you look in these photos and you study them, you can find future officers while they were students. And that's Fred Hammert. Now, Mary Lou should be in this photo, if I can find her. I don't see her.
And who was she?
That could be her there, but I don't know. So, that's the banquet at the 56 convention. You know, that looks like a chi in the background.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at it, you say, well, where's the delta? It's not a chi, it's a Roman numeral 10 for the Big Ten Conference. And you see the map of the states at the intersection and the university logos. Interesting, there's a piece of paper in that door, probably because the door rattles with air pressure, driving Deborah nuts. I should take it out.
You mentioned Mary Lou. Do you mind mentioning who that was?
Well, of course, we all know Marge Lee, who started in '64 and passed away in the fall of 2008. And she was trained by Mary Lou Beeler, who was fired by Bracestead, I don't know why, in the fall of '70. And she had started in March 4 of 2000, timeout, March 4 of 1954. And she was trained, she says, by OK Patton. So we need to talk about that later. But before her was Artis Vandevert, who was from Pella, Iowa. And she overlapped Bernice Hauber, who's from Ottumwa, who was basically, those were the Marge Lees of Delta Chi's history. So I'd like to know more about each of them, but and of course Mary Lou Beeler came to the staff reunion earlier this month. That was great. She's sharp as a tack. I've been writing a history of the headquarters, and I've sent it to her, and she's done some additions to it. And I also sent a copy of it with Boyd Bulgy. He hasn't sent his edits back yet, so I'm waiting for that. So I suppose I should talk about the history of the headquarters. which we haven't talked about. And I've got some outline of things to talk about that I talked about during the reunion, but haven't been taped. Why are we in Iowa City? Well, the records used to go with the national officers, the membership records and correspondence with the CC, and the financial records with the DD. And in 1923, O.K. Patton, who was professor of contract law at Iowa, was elected CC. So the membership records came here. And that's also in a two-stage process, 21 convention and 23 convention. Delta Chi officially shifted from a law fraternity, what we used to call a legal fraternity, and one day I said, as opposed to illegal, and so we switched to calling it a law fraternity. You can check the copies of the ritual as to when that happened, and the Constitution. So now I got myself off track there, but the records came here, membership records. We went general, and we expanded to Alabama, Columbia, Florida, Idaho, Illinois, Iowa State, Kansas, Oklahoma, Penn State, Purdue. I can't think. That should be it. I thought it was interesting, and Embry-Riddle alumnus complained that it was all Midwest. I said, well, wait, and SMU, Penn State, Alabama, Florida. He said, I missed those. But that's a classic representative of regional bias that people feel put upon, and they hear what they want to hear. So much for that. Well, so in 23, the records came here, and then in 29, the fraternity officially established a headquarters, and the financial records came here to join the membership records. Then in 51, O.K. Patton retires. Now there's different stories on that. One story is he had a falling out with, two stories, with Henry McGurran, who was on the governing board from 1914 until 1964. McGurran supposedly found out that we were renting the Clinton Street office from O.K. Patton, who owned the building. McGurran felt that was a conflict of interest and raised a stink and immediately looked in the Chicago area for a place to move the headquarters, because he lived in Chicago. And what he determined was he couldn't find any place as inexpensive as what Iowa City was charging. Now, Mary Lou Beeler said that O.K. Patton was charging no rent to the fraternity. And since she was so close to everything, you would think she'd know. I had heard that O.K. Patton was charging far less than market. Free is far less, but I don't know. So they looked in 51, couldn't move it any place, couldn't afford to move. We were not financially well off. So then we were without an executive director from 56. First of all, in 53, in 51, Don Isaac became the executive secretary for 2 years. Then Warren Etchison from 53 to 56, apparently the last 2 years, while he was teaching at the University of Washington in Seattle, where he later became dean of the business school. And then they had a headquarters committee. It's listed in the quarterly, but OK Patton was supposedly on it, and Marsh White, I'm not sure who else. So then in '61, they hired Buck Buchanan, who had been a field man. He is Wisconsin 35. He had been a field man in the 30s. And he became the executive secretary. And in '61, and he died of a heart attack in '66. Supposedly, after leaving a dental appointment, he died on the sidewalk. Don't know if that's true. So in '67, we thought OK Patton dies in the mid-'60s. I don't have the date on that. And we assumed that he would leave the building to us, and we'd have free rent, and we'd have income from the storefront on first floor, street level, which originally was a drugstore and later became McDonald Optical. A lot of people think it's above the airliner. No, it's a couple doors from the airliner. So we thought we were going to have a sweetheart deal, and Mrs. Patton inherited the building, and she immediately raised the rent thinking she'd have a retirement income. We got our nose bent out of joint, looked for another place to move the headquarters, and again we looked at Chicago, St. Louis, Indianapolis, and we ended up buying Church Street. And we moved, which offended her, and that's how we got to be at Church Street. So in the '70s, while Bracestead was the exec, they looked again at moving the headquarters, again Chicago, St. Louis, Indianapolis, I forget where else, and we stayed in Iowa City. As an interesting note, Delta Tau Delta, well, I should do that in '90. In '92, there'd been a big push to move the headquarters to Indianapolis. And at the pre-convention board meeting at the '92 convention, they talked about moving the headquarters, and Hauser did a study, and it's 1/4 of an inch thick. I don't know if you've seen it, analyzing the headquarters location. And he basically recommended we stay in Iowa City. If we're going to move, each board member that voted to move should take the vote yes as a pledge of $10,000 to help pay for it. Well, it was lunchtime, they called a recess, and they said, the AA said at the time, when we come back, we will immediately vote on this motion. First thing. And so we all left, ate lunch, coming back. I got delayed in the hallway by undergraduates who wanted to meet me, and that's fine. I talked to them. I walked into the board room, and it was as if someone had died. Dead silent. I said, what happened? And they said, whoever was next to me said they voted to move the headquarters to Indy. I said, you're kidding. And Bob LeBoy, who was opposed to the move, walks in, looks around, what happened? Don LaPlante walks in, who had been opposed. They both were delayed for the elevator traffic of undergraduates checking in. So they couldn't be there on time. So they were warned the motion would take place immediately, and it did. But guys who were opposed were not in the room, a couple of them, and it swung the vote. So finally, they had a motion to reconsider, and the motion failed, and we stayed in Iowa City. That was 92. So there's been rumblings, and finally they decided to move to Indianapolis. So that's where we are on that.
What was the first office space called before Clinton
The
Street?
Snyder Building. So in College. There was a change in the early years. There was an X-Ax. The old X-Ax was about a 5 or 6 man board, and it was dominated by the metropolitan law chapters. They were older students, more gifted at speaking and so on, and they kept the professional law and more importantly at the time the single membership status. And so circa 1909 there was a political maneuver to unseat West Virginia, Washington University, St. Louis, and Northwestern, which were all dual membership chapters. And so the motion passed the convention to go single membership. And those 3 chapters quit. It's around someplace. The Washington University chapter took their charter, broke it in half, and mailed it back. And when I came, it was still folded in half, and I opened it up and had it matted and framed by in a matte frame I made. I took Jenna and I took framing and matting classes at night, so I could do some of this stuff to save money and to protect it. So interesting. In the 20s, there were a few new rituals proposed. People were unhappy with our existing ritual, the one basically we still have. And there was Billy Bride wrote a new ritual. Charles Gerstenberg wrote a new ritual. They're in that bottom drawer, in that 4-drawer fireproof filing cabinet. And you know, it just didn't happen. One time it even passed, one of them passed the convention, but they was never sent out to the chapters. And so it died. All the others just died on the convention floor. So, then staying with the ritual, I have been a proponent to change the ending of the ritual, and we managed at one, and I've been fighting the fight for a long time, and for some reason Paul Bowman joined me in the fight, and at a convention got the alternative ending put in. I don't know if it would have happened without Paul joining me in that fight. And so, when done correctly, the alternative is excellent. I have seen it done well, but when you half do it, nothing looks right. And that's what most chapters do. Whatever they experience is what they think is right. Also, I think there's a mean streak in this all where we want to stick it to someone. and that's what it's about. Sorry. In 1949, the board voted to, maybe I should go back to the 30s. We had a 39 chapter fraternity that was willing to merge with a bigger fraternity. We were in the running. Marsh White was working hard on it. OK Patton fought it, didn't want the extra work, and those 39 chapters went SIG-up. Where would we be with those 39 chapters added to our ranks? In 49, Marsh White, the executive board, authorized Marsh to contact Balfour to see about them writing a new ritual. That ritual is in that bottom drawer. And it's stupid.
Never even made it to convention.
No. 54, I already talked about the White Claws. In the late 60s, at one point, we had 21 colonies. Holy cow. Braced it, and that was Frank Zigrain out there. Moriarty likes to tell the story. Frank Zigrain came to Oshkosh. He bought a few beers for some people, and they woke up the next morning with pledge pins on. And he said, we went to Baird's Manual to see what this fraternity was, and then called the headquarters and said, what should we do? Asked Mike Moriarty this story. So that's how we got 21 colonies, many of which stuck. Amazing. If expansion was that easy now. The 70 convention it kind of blew up in the fraternity's face. The chapters found out we had an endowment fund of $60,000. There was apparently a motion on the floor to divvy it back up among the chapters. We shouldn't have taken the money from them. I think that's where all of our undergraduate reps got on our various committees. I don't know that for sure, but I think that's true. It was a bad convention. Oh, the duck ritual. Eastern Illinois and Illinois State had something they called the duck ritual, where the initiate had to waddle through the whole ritual, holding their ankles with their hands and waddling through, and the guys would knock them over, and they had all sorts of secrets. And there's a lot of people from those two chapters that know the duck secrets instead of our secrets. Great. Either we're a Delta Chi or we're not. Now, in 1978, Gary Monk had worked on the Northeastern Small Fraternity 12 chapters, trying to get them to join Delta Chi. He went to their convention. He said he felt he was lucky to get out of the room alive. Then Autohelm apparently said, we need to find a fraternity more our size. Nick Gray thought Theta Xi was an opportunity, went and talked to them. And so we ended up in merger talks with Theta Xi. They had supposedly 65 chapters. We had 77. They had a big chapter in swimming pool at UCLA. We were dead there. They had an 80-man chapter in Nebraska. We were dead there. They had a chapter at Washington State. We were dead there. I'd have to think for a while. We had a chapter at Auburn, and they had a chapter at Auburn, but they had a great house. We had something that needed to be bulldozed and was. So we could sell the land and endow the building, move our few guys in with them and have a decent chapter if they could get along. Illinois, both had great chapters. Shoot, that's all I can think of at the moment. And bottom line, the word got out, and Cornell said they wouldn't go with the merger. Alabama said they wouldn't go with the merger. Some other big boys said they wouldn't, and I was afraid it would be a Pyrrhic victory, and I called Bob LeBoy and said we need to call this off, and we did. And we got to be 125 chapters, and they got to be 55 chapters. Where would we be? And the name of the new fraternity would have been Delta Xi. You couldn't match the other letters and make anything that made sense. They want to use all 4 letters. We'd be a freak. Two things. Gary Monk said they had to give up the unicorn, which was their symbol, and I had to be the new exec. And they agreed to both of those. Larry, both their exec and Larry had resigned that fall. Probably read Larry Autohelm's last in the bond, and that gives you a sense of what he felt. Muddied feet.